This is Financial Times. And in one of its articles, in August 2017, it reads, China's missionaries seek converts along the Belt and Road. Again, this is BBC. It reads, Risky Road. China's missionaries follow Beijing West. You can see the two pictures, and it reads, when so-called Islamic State announced on 8 June that it had killed a Chinese man and woman in their mid-20s in Pakistan's most volatile province, many would have assumed that there were two of the thousands of workers that Beijing had sent to the country in the last few years. China is investing more than 55 billion in Pakistan, a key beneficiary of the global plan to connect Asia and Europe with a Silk Road paid by Beijing. But this is a risky road. For what? For what? It says also, as you can read here, they were in provincial capital Quetta on a clandestine mission to spread the word of Christianity in the unlikeliest and most dangerous places in conservative Muslim Pakistan. It also reads, hundreds and possibly even thousands of countries' growing cadre of Christian missionaries are along for the ride too, even if Beijing doesn't want them there. So what is this Belt and Silk Road? This is the Belt and Road Initiative, as you can see in the map. It says the Belt and Road Initiative, or BRI, is an ambitious effort to improve regional cooperation and connectivity on transcontinental scale. And the initiative aims to strengthen the infrastructure, trade, and investment links between China, some 65 other countries that account collectively for over 30% of global GDP. As you all know, that troubles going on in China for Muslims, and Chinese government has taken off several steps to carve Muslim activities or even observance of Islam in China. This has obviously angered many Islamist organizations and Muslims at large around the world. According to the McKinsey Institute, in an article published on 25th of December 1995, one of the main sources for finance for Tamil Tigers or LTTE was opium and drugs, and they also were extorting money from Tamils living in several parts of the world. Here, heroin and Tamil Tigers. Smuggling has been a long tradition with both Jaffna area and among the Hindu caste, which provided the early leadership of the LTTE. You can see that here. This is an article which was published by Rachel Ehrenfeld, May 4th, 2011, on CNN. The title was Drug Trafficking Kidnapping Fund Al-Qaeda. Drug trafficking. And we know that Afghanistan was the cradle for Al-Qaeda, and one of the main sources of economy for Afghanistan is opium. Here, it reads here. Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb terrorist group, for example, has sustained itself since 2003 primarily on revenues derived from the business of hostage taking, mostly Westerners. It also engages in drug trafficking and receives some donations. So we can see a common pattern with the LTTE funding and drug trafficking by Al Qaeda. It reads, the illegal drug business, mostly Afghan heroin, has been a bountiful financial resource for the Taliban, Al Qaeda, and its affiliates in Pakistan, Central Asia, Africa, and Latin America. Can there be an understanding between terrorist groups? Well, it is possible if they have the same purpose on a certain mission. This is Combating Terrorism Center in its article, March 2015, Volume 8, Issue 3. Terrorist affiliations in context, a typology of terrorist intergroup cooperation. According to this article, various terrorist groups can cooperate with each other for permanent merging and strategic alliance for that, and also if they have low-end cooperation for tactical and transactional cooperation. So is it possible for LTTE to have cooperation with the Islamist groups like Islamic State, Al Qaeda? I don't see why not. If they have the same purpose of having a homeland for the Muslims where they can say that a particular religion will not gain the upper hand, if that's the first step. But for that, they need to cut the influence of the evangelical Christians, Christian missionaries, cut the Western influence, and also to cut the Chinese influence. So I don't see why LTTE or similar organizations, obviously they're saying LTTE is not in existence anymore, but I'm pretty sure Tamil movement, homeland movement is not over. The aspirations are not over, as we can see from the activities of Mr. Emmanuel earlier on. So why can't there be a cooperation for Tamil homeland? And why can't we see there is a power balance for the Islamists and Tamil Marxist groups? There are several articles you can see online who are rather blaming Christians' conspiracy for the death of Rajiv Gandhi, and also blaming Christian conspiracy for the ultimate downfall of the LTTE. Here is an example. Rajiv Gandhi was blown by a Christian conspiracy. Here. You can read that. After the expulsions of Muslims from the north, eventually, before he died, Prabhakaran and Anton, they apologized to the Muslims for the expulsion. And thus, they have reconciled, at least the reminiscence of Tamil LTTE are now in a compromised situation with the Muslims. But according to Sri Lankan constitution, Buddhism is the state religion, although according to Article 9 and Chapter 2 of the Sri Lankan constitution, the freedom of religion is protected, but that's, I think, for the namesake only. Because if you land, even at the Sri Lankan airport, you will see a big Buddhist statue there. And also, limitations on the proselytism were outlined by the Supreme Court of Sri Lanka in 2018, with a ruling against the Catholic organization stating that the provision of economic and financial support for vulnerable individuals while promulgating a faith was an infringement upon those individuals' right to freedom of religion. So obviously there were many complaints already in existence against Christian proselytism in Sri Lanka. So much so that the Sri Lankan Supreme Court had to put a limitation on proselytism by the Christian missionaries there. This is World Watch Monitor. According to this article published on 29th of October 2018, it reads, Sri Lanka, sharp increase in violence against Christians. It reads that Christians in Sri Lanka have experienced a sharp increase in attacks this year, with 67 reported cases between January and September, according to National Christian Evangelical Alliance of Sri Lanka. And it reads, according to Morning Star News, we are witnessing that communities are being mobilized in an increasing manner against Christians. A lawyer from the NCESL, National Christian Evangelical Alliance, said. And it goes on to say, the incidents are not anymore only led by extremist groups, but we are seeing that the extremist elements are able to influence communities as a whole and lead violent mob attacks against places of worship and people, the lawyer said, before also noting an increased influence of nationalist Hindu groups in India. In the eastern province, we see a lot of influence from India's Hindu right-wing groups such as the RSS, Rashtriya Swayansemak Sangh, seeping into Sri Lanka. Hindu extremist groups have had meetings with Hindu villages, promoting hatred and division, inciting them towards violence. So, Hindu extremist groups were already creating hatred, inciting hatred against the Christians in Sri Lanka, and the attacks were on the rise. The speaker here is a spokesperson from UN Human Rights at the UN Human Rights Council from World Evangelical Alliance. What did he say at the UN Human Rights Council about the situation in Sri Lanka?
Our member National Alliance in Sri Lanka informed us last month that the Sri Lankan Supreme Court decided that the right, I quote, to propagate one's religion is not protected by the Constitution. We appeal to the governments of Sri Lanka, Nepal, and India to repeal legislation and jurisprudence that violate religious freedom. We are experiencing more and more restrictions on freedom of religion or belief that reflect a paternalist understanding of the state, which feels that it has a role to protect adherents to the majority religion from the danger of changing their beliefs and adhering to other worldviews.
This World Watch Monitor, there's an article published on October 10, 2016, Peaceful Buddhism's Violent Face in Sri Lanka. So there were also attacks on Christians from Buddhist extremists as well. And you can read the article here. RSS is supported by the BJP, the ruling BJP, and you can read all about it in various discussions. And you can just simply Google search it and you will see that BJP supports RSS. Here, RSS, and this is Hindustan Times. It reads, RSS targets 100% turnout to ensure BJP win. The very RSS who are involved in atrocities against Christians, according to World Monitor, in Sri Lanka. Sri Lankan government has pointed to National Tawhid Jamaat for the attacks in Sri Lanka. Now, these leaders of National Tawhid Jamaat declare allegiance to Islamic State. And Islamic State also released claim that they were behind the attacks in Sri Lanka. Now, it is quite impossible for Tawhid Jamaat or Islamic State without any other intervening power to carry out such a massive attack in Sri Lanka. LTTE were equipped with firepower to carry out such havocs in Sri Lanka in the past. Now, the question remains whether Hindu extremist groups and other extremist groups worked with a similar organization like LTTE or similar organizations to have to broker a cooperation between Islamic State and the attack in Sri Lanka in exchange of drugs or heroin or any other exchange for both of them, the Christian missionaries and the presence of China and Western influence there is detrimental, as we have seen so far. Surprise, surprise, Indian Express newspaper releases that 7 Indian firms among those in Islamic State supply chain EU study. Are you getting the bridge here between Islamic terrorism in the Middle East, Al-Qaeda, Islamic State, and Sri Lankan extremism? Now go ahead, do your equations and find out how the terror in Sri Lanka unfolded. I'm pretty sure Islamic State or National Tawhid Jamaat didn't act alone.